Hey everybody, it is May 3rd, that's a Friday, and the year is 2019, and this is the Pro and Con Show, and I am your host, Michael James Ott. So welcome to the show. Appreciate you dialing in or being online, wherever you are watching this, or watching it after the show is over. Live every day, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. You're welcome to comment at any time. Please write a comment, especially I'd love to know if you're out there, wherever you're from. Just say, hey, I'm live watching from Hawaii. I'm live watching from Spokane. I'm live watching from Bora Bora. Anyway, love to have you, and thanks for joining us today. Now, the purpose is trying to help everyone get beyond this issue of what is the truth, right? And so this series, I'm doing roughly 15 minutes every day, is to talk about the truth and how you know what is and is not true, and where those sources of truth can be found. And basically, I'm strongly advocating that every one of us, whether you feel like you're more conservative or more liberal or somewhere in between, regardless of who you are, that you embrace the whole truth, which is the pros and the cons, the good and the bad, the for and against, for over whatever issue, and you become fully informed. And so normally what I would do at this time is I would go through, I have, and if you watch one of the other programs, I have taken 5 websites that I think a lot of people look at and get their news from. And I've taken the spectrum from more liberal, with, for example, the Huffington Post, through maybe a little bit less liberal, CNN, to a website, the NPR, which is known mostly to be mostly unbiased, and then Fox News, more conservative, if you will, and then or right-leaning, and then Breitbart, which would be thought of being even more conservative or more right-leaning. And normally what I would do is talk for some minutes about some of the stories of today. But I've got a conflict. I got to get out of here. And so, honestly. And the other part is that really, not really any single outstanding story today. But I do want to, so I want to say 2 things. So first, be careful, regardless of whatever article you're reading online or whatever, and I would strongly encourage you to do this, because I've seen this happen multiple times. So this article, this author puts these claims forward on an online article, and it says this and this and this, and you can, and then there'll be the hot links, the hyperlinks to take you to these articles that supposedly this woman or man is referencing. And so, you assume that people would follow those hyperlinks and check it out. But the reality is, apparently, a lot of people don't. And so I have, I've found this in sports articles. I've found it in more left-leaning articles, more right-leaning articles. You actually, the author of the article you're reading will say, well, this article or this thing says this. And so but if you actually click on it and you go to that website or that web page, oh, wait a second, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that at all. So they're doing this kind of sleight of hand, hoping that you won't take the extra effort to go down a layer or 2 into this. And I think whatever you're doing, that's a good way to get to the truth, is to dig a little deeper, and it takes time. And folks, one of the other things I'd advocate for is all of us, all Americans, we have to be more active and take more time in understanding the issues, and trying to make sure that we're well educated, fully informed on the issues. And then once we're fully informed, like I said in some of my other presentations up to this point, I'm perfectly happy with the various ideas and thoughts that people have, as long as they're fully informed thoughts and ideas for what they think ought to be done. Does that make sense? I hope it does, because that's why I'm doing this series day after day for the foreseeable future. So the other thing is, since I don't really want to go through it, takes several minutes to go through some of the other websites and kind of compare some of the news stories and how they're being handled by liberal, kind of independent or centrist or unbiased and more conservative right kind of leaning websites. And you can kind of see it, and we've talked about that in past episodes, and we'll talk about it in future episodes as well. But what I'd like to do is go ahead and just touch on election reform for a few minutes. And the reason why I want to touch on that is that's one of my personal pet peeves, if you will. So raise your hand out there. You're watching. How many people love those attack ads? You gotta love them. Election cycle gets close to election. Continuous attack ads from both sides, both parties, both candidates for whatever. And of course, in any election cycle, there's multiple positions that are trying to be filled in our government. And of course, then that means multiples of these attack ads. And then, I don't know, I personally, I feel terrible that all these, even hundreds of millions of dollars now are taken up in the candidacy. If you're running for one of the main Senate seats or presidency of this country, wow, big time money, and the influence of big time money. And I personally feel, and I think as I speak to people, there's a lot of people that are very concerned about this. And I would even, and so I'm going to lay blame at the feet of us, most of the citizenry, because we have accepted this thing, and it started years and years and years ago. In fact, I read some little thing that said that George Washington, one of the reasons why he didn't want to continue being president is that the political parties had started to form, and he couldn't handle, he hated the whole idea of these two competing views just bashing each other just for the sake of trying to get power. And you'll hear in future episodes, I'm going to talk about, how all of this, many of our ills are all driven by the fact that we have the wrong definition of success. We define success as the accumulation of wealth, influence, and power. And I think, if you take a moment just to think about that, that's directly tied to the political system these days, and people try to get in office because they're trying to use the office, the political office, to gain wealth, influence, and power, as opposed to being the public servant that they're supposed to be. And that, in the bottom line is, and I know if I were to do a survey, 90% of you at least would say, I don't care what office you're in the, either a state office or a federal office or whatever, whether you're appointed or elected, you are supposed to be a public servant. And to use that office to try to garner wealth, influence, and power, that's wrong. And I know 90% of you believe that. So how are we going to fix it? Well, this is where, again, we're all going to have to get involved. We have to get involved, very much involved. We're going to have to probably take to the streets peacefully, but in huge numbers, and go and say, look, this whole thing is gone wrong. We've got to change it. And what I'm suggesting is if you think of a mashup of jury duty and Facebook and the current election system, what you'd have is, and this is just a basic framework, and of course all the details would have to be worked out over time, but here's the framework. Just like in jury duty, you get randomly called up, and then what happens is you are randomly called for election duty or duty in an office and duty in various offices. You wouldn't be told which ones at first, and then you're okay. Now you've got to submit information on you. You know, what's your background, education, how comfortable are you speaking in public, and all this kind of stuff. You just rate yourself and provide information, and that information goes into a database, and then that kind of percolates. Well, these people, you know, some number of them might make better people for serving in public office than others. And so there would be maybe an initial election. This is all online. This is the Facebook part of it. So this is all, these are secure websites, cannot be accessed inappropriately. People can come in and make comments, but it's traceable who those people are. They're going to have to certify who they are and so on. And then ultimately, once you use this process, and people can just go online, and perhaps even all the candidates would do videos like this one, just short videos, and they would talk about what they think about various issues. And all of us, the citizenry, would watch these things every election cycle for the offices that we need to fill, and we would, you know, vote on people that we thought, based on the characteristics and based on videos and based on maybe little town halls and whatever, who we thought were good candidates. And then that would percolate into, for example, the presidency. Maybe there's 10 candidates identified from across the country that are the top 10. They come up from this process, just kind of, you know, bubble up, if you will, just like in Facebook, the popularity of certain websites, whatever, they would bubble up. And then you would have perhaps a preliminary election where those 10 candidates, and again, it's arbitrary, it could be 8, it could be 6, it could be 4, whatever, but those candidates would do some campaigning. Again, very structured, everyone's equal, no big money in it. And then the next step after that would be, you know, the preliminary election, and maybe it's, and again, it's arbitrary, but maybe it's down to 2 or 3 candidates, and then those candidates would be provided one last opportunity, maybe another month, to get online, to do town halls, to interview, to, you know, talk about issues and all this other stuff, and then ultimately we'd have the final election, and one of these people would be, man or woman, would be selected for the various offices. And just think of that on the, you know, for president, Senate, House of Representatives, and so on. Well, anyway, that's just trying to get that thought out there that we should totally change the way that our election system works. We have the technology today, and you know, big money and all the attack ads and all that. Everyone hates them. It's a universal thing. So be thinking about that. Talk to each other about that around this country and hopefully around the world, and start having a dialogue with your friends and your and also your neighbors and people in government, and just say, hey, you know, there's this idea. Let's try to make this take shape, and let's go forward with something new and better. So I'm running out of time. I've got to go to my my next obligation here in the family. So this has been the Pro and the Con show. Again, I'm the host, Michael James Ott. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and be thinking about how to be a better citizen. And get out there and talk to your friends and neighbors, and let's all be better citizens, and make the government that is by the people and therefore for the people. All right? Hope you have an awesome, awesome Friday. Bye for now.